Everyone, good morning. Thank you for accepting our webinar. I'd like to welcome the ones that are for the first time here. Welcome. Thank you for your time. This webinar of today will be around the power of hybrid cloud. Jasper is going to talk to you about what's the first step to go to the hybrid cloud. And this is me. My name is Adriana Wang. I'm the marketing executive for Inova Solutions. I've been sending you these invites, etc. Jasper, you can click the next slide, please. Oh, for all the ones, I'll be recording this session. We will have this recording available on a YouTube channel, the link I will be sending you after this webinar session. So feel free to share it with your colleagues, friends, etc. The webinar outline, we respect your time, so we try to be as timely as possible. We have a presentation of the main subject by Jasper. He is our solution architect. He will introduce himself in a bit. I encourage you in the Q&A section to unmute your mic if you have any questions, or use the messaging box to write up your questions. But it's nice to hear some other voices than only Jasper or myself. At the end, I have a very nice ebook for you ready, where in that ebook it's going to be a little bit more in depth of going to the cloud, etc. So stay tuned to get the link. Jasper, take over. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning from Aruba. So I'm happy to see a couple of people who I haven't seen in a long time, and I see a couple of people who were in the previous webinars. I think this is number 6. We are doing every last Thursday of the month. And today on the agenda we are going to talk a little bit on cloud and how to get there, on hybrid cloud, and there's a lot to say about that. So let's just get started. I try to finish up in 25 minutes, so we have some time for Q&A as well. So this is me. That's enough about me. You will hear my voice for the next 25 minutes, so you will get to know me if you don't know that already. So let's have a very quick overview on a bit of terminology of cloud. So at present, probably a lot of you have your on-premises infrastructure where you manage and buy everything. So you're on your own hardware, you have your software licenses, you have to manage and control everything, and more of that. And then we could move into the cloud where we have 3 different pillars. We have infrastructure as a service, where actually the cloud provider will provide the hardware. And on top of that, you can do anything that you can do on your on-premises hardware as well. So you can install operating systems and applications and runtime, and you have your data available and your applications. So that is infrastructure as a service. Then next to that, we move to platform as a service, where you manage less and the cloud vendor manages more. So you don't have to bother about operating systems and runtime anymore. You only have to bother about your data and your applications. And then finally, the most to the right, we have software as a service, where you just plug it in and it is available. I have some examples. So Exchange Online is a good example of software as a service. You just open your Outlook, you type your username and your password, voila, you have email at your disposal, and there's nothing for you to do with that, except, of course, start emailing. So this is just a very brief overview of cloud in general, and then there is 2 important things to consider in this picture. As we move from left to right, probably, and I say probably, it's not guaranteed, so don't pin me on that. your costs will go down. But I have a whole slide on the financial consequences later on, so let's not go too deep in that now. And the other arrow, the green one, is about ease of management. And with that, I really mean a lot, ease of management. So obviously, if you would use only software as a service, then there is no need to have knowledge about hardware. There is no need to have hardware, servers and storage and networking and whatever. So that eases up management, for example. So keep that in mind, that probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a large shift from on-premises to cloud computing. And maybe some of you have already started that journey, and maybe some of you are considering it. So then you're exactly in the right spot, because that is exactly what we're discussing over here. So there's a couple of steps to go hybrid, and hybrid, I have one very small slide on that one. Hybrid means as soon as you touch the cloud and you have on-premises infrastructure as well, you are hybrid. So hybrid is anything between having 99% of your stuff on-premises and 1% in the cloud, then you're hybrid. If it's the other way around, if you are 99% in the cloud, but you have still 1% in on-premises, you're still hybrid. So there are some things to know before you can go there. And let's start with general knowledge. So higher management, and I mean the business decision makers, they need to strategize. I will go into that later on as well. So strategize based on knowledge. And then knowledge for the IT staff. Cloud is different than on-premises. And I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, so I'm biased, but training as needed is too late. You really need to do your training before you start any deployment, because otherwise you will deploy stuff and then you end up in a situation where you don't know how to manage it, and that's a place where you don't want to be. And then for end users, training, you make the business, you make the money for your business, so you should get what you need to use those cloud services or use on-premises services, but make sure that you know your system so that you can do your work at your best. Then, of course, you will have to check within your organization, can you do cloud computing? So, are you compliant? Is it an option? I mean, we cover a lot of countries in the Caribbean and Latin America, and legislation is different everywhere. So you might end up in a place where you find out that you are not allowed to store, let's say, customer data in a public cloud. So you better check before you start moving to the cloud, instead of finding out when it's too late and you're already there with your stuff. So please check that out. And then, of course, you have probably your own security policies, and you want to apply those as well. And there's something about retention. So retention means how long do you have to keep your data? What is the regulations on keeping data, financial data or transactional data or whatever. So that is stuff to really consider before you take your first steps. And then you have to think about identity management. So as long as you are on premises and you run Active Directory, you just have to deal with your local user accounts, and they sign into their computer every day, and then they have access to your applications and your email system and whatever. But as soon as you put workloads in the cloud, identity management becomes another thing. So that is really something to consider as well in how are you going to deal with that. It's really the first step, because your identity management has to be in place before you deploy your first workload. That seems pretty logical, because otherwise you put a workload in there and then people cannot reach it because you don't have your authentication mechanisms in place. So these are just a couple of things to consider. So this is what it would look like in a very simple, so your enterprise cloud is your on-premises data center. We call that a private cloud because you are the owner of the hardware and everything is really owned by you. And then there is your hybrid situation. And of course you want to have that transparent and you want to have that secure. And you're going to use either software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service. And when to choose what, I will come back to that in a bit. That depends a lot on the type of organization you are. So let's look at some options. So I'm talking about workloads, and a workload is your mail is a workload, or your file server is a workload. So when we talk cloud, we don't talk necessarily servers. So I don't say Exchange server. No, your mail is a workload, and your file repository is a workload. It can be on SharePoint on-premises, or a file server, or a SAN solution, whatever. It's a workload. So there's a couple of options to start with cloud. So you could think of start using cloud with new workloads. So those are workloads that you currently don't have. So that's a pretty safe way, because that means that you actually are not touching your current production environment. So you could look at disaster recovery in the cloud, put your backups in there, or even use Azure Site Recovery as a backup site. So you're not touching your current infrastructure or your current production, you're just adding something to it. We do a lot at the moment with mobile security. So your users are no longer only in your corporate LAN, your users are everywhere, and they want to be connected to their applications and their data from everywhere, from their Android phones and their iPads, and sitting in lobbies at airports or sitting at home on Sunday afternoon. They just want to be able to access. And then there's something called operations management. So if you don't have serious monitoring tools for your on-premises servers right now, then you could say, hey, let's put those monitoring tools. Let's not buy that and configure that ourselves, but just let us use some cloud services to monitor our on-premises solutions. Then you can look at existing workloads that you have, and there we have a couple of choices. So you can go for something we call packaged solutions. So Office 365 is a perfect example of a packaged solution. It's software as a service, and you probably have some kind of mail platform running right now. So mail is a good example of a packaged solution where you can move that existing workload to the cloud. Brand names like Office 365, they are now so-called proven technology. So you don't really need to investigate anymore on is it really reliable, is it secure, no, it's proven technology. Businesses all around the world are going there. Yesterday, Microsoft announced that in specific data centers, they now even go up to security level 5 for the Department of Defense, and that's really a high security grade. So it's out there. It's available. Then you can look at your current infrastructure, and you have your virtual machines running in there in your virtual networks, and you can just pick that up and put those virtual machines in the cloud. So a business case scenario for that could be, hey, your hardware needs to be updated. and that is going to cost you a lot of money and upfront investment. It might be a good business case to say in that situation, okay, so let's not make that investment, but let us move those virtual machines that we are running with the workloads on top of them. Let's move them to the cloud. We call that lift and shift, and that will use the infrastructure as a service pillar out of the cloud diagram. What you can also do, and I'm a big fan of this, I don't really like the lift and shift, because if you lift and shift, you take a lot of the problems and issues in managing operating systems and stuff like that. You just take it with you. And also the scalability, so then we'll talk about costs and pricing. The scalability of infrastructure as a service is not as good as the scalability of platform as a service. So if you run a web application and a SQL database right now on virtual machines, yes, we can move those virtual machines into the cloud, but you could also re-architecture that whole application, and then you're going to use platform as a service, and you deploy a web app without an operating system, and you can deploy SQL databases without a SQL server. And then, of course, you pay less, and it's very flexible and very scalable. And finally, a very good existing workload to move away from your production platform are developers and testers. I mean, they always require resources, they always mess around with production environments and stuff like that. They need a lot of resources if you have a serious developer team. So, hey, move them away, give them a nice subscription in Azure, and let them deploy their own virtual machines and web apps and whatever, and get them off of your local infrastructure. Should you have any questions so far, please break in, type something or shout something. That's you're more than welcome to do so. I just move on to my next slide. So as I said earlier, any move you will make you hybrid. So let's look a bit at architecture. I already explained a little bit on the difference between infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So from a technical point of view, so this is a bit on technical architecture, forget what you think you know, it's going to be very different. So really you have to think like this. So I have been shouting this for a long time. Who needs a server? Who needs a desktop? You don't call the thing on your mobile phone, you don't call that a desktop. You just want the application, and if you open that application, your data should be in there as well. That is what we want. You're not interested in servers, you're not interested in hardware, in storage, in switches, in cables. You're not interested in that. All you want to do is give your users, the people who are making the money for your business, they need access to their business apps, and they need access to their business data. That's all. Unless, of course, IT is your core business, then it might be a different situation. Then we have to look at adoption. So moving to the cloud really means everybody's talking about the digital transformation and stuff like that. So that is actually driven by going to the cloud. So going to the cloud is a business strategy. It is not an IT decision. So people who were here last month can remember when we were talking about productivity, that was also about cloud and productivity. I also said that adoption process must be managed by higher management, by the business. IT has nothing to do with it. IT is only there to provide the services and to configure it and to make it secure and whatever. But the whole adoption is a business-driven process, and it's not even an IT responsibility. So someone in higher management, and preferably the CEO, he is the owner of the process called cloud adoption. And cloud adoption should have and not immediately, not like tomorrow nobody is able to work, but cloud adoption should have a high impact on users, collaboration, and their productivity. If there's no impact on users, you're doing it wrong. So if you move everything to the cloud, and I come into your office 3 years from now, and everything looks the same as it does now, then you didn't adopt to the cloud. You just moved your workloads from one place to the other, and for the rest it's business as usual. There should be a huge impact on how people work and how you drive your business. That's an interesting statement, I think. If there's no impact on users, you're doing it wrong. So remember that. So let's talk a little bit on finance. So I have a lot of conversations with customers. And one of the things that always pops up is cost. So, and then they say, how much is this gonna cost me? And then I always try to reply with, well, let's not look about what it is gonna cost you. Let's look at what the value is of this proposition. Because if you try to compare costs of running your stuff yourself in your on-premises data center or running it in the cloud, you cannot compare that. The services are different. In the cloud, you have a huge platform of services that are available that you can only dream of having that running in your local data center. So there is no comparison. Another difference in really finance departments is that you are going to move from capital expenditure to operational expenditure. And capital expenditure, of course, is like doing those huge investments in your hardware. Every 4 or 5 years, you need to buy new storage, new servers, so that's every 4 or 5 years, that's a huge investment. And then you just hope that you can get some return on investment of that. In a cloud world, you will never have to make such investments because the resources are not yours. You just pay for what you actually use. That means from a cost perspective that IT will move, and people who know my core infrastructure optimization sessions know that model. There's a model, and it matures the place of IT within your organization. So you will move from just being a cost center in the profit and loss. You will move to becoming a business enabler. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your cost will go down. Remember that first slide where I said your costs will go down? That probably is not the case. I don't think that IT costs will go down in the next 10 years, like they didn't go down in the last 10 years. So the dependency on IT will only grow in the next 10 years, and I guess that IT cost will not go down. IT cost will be more controllable. That is for sure. If you move to the cloud, you have way more control on sizing and costs and deployment times and whatever. So a lot of the overhead that will definitely drop. So this is really a comparison that we cannot make that. I mean, you probably don't know what a workload is costing you now. You probably have no idea what your mail platform is costing you now. So then it's not fair to say, $4 for a 50 gig, 100 gig mailbox in Exchange Online, that is expensive. That's based on nothing. That's based on wow, for 1,000 users, that is $4,000 a month. That is a lot of money. Yeah, sure. I mean, if you have 100,000 users, then it will cost you $400,000. So yes, that's a lot of money. I agree. Put it in my bank account and you'll never see me again. But you cannot say that, you cannot compare. So be careful with looking at costs as your decision point. The decision point should not be on the cost. The decision points should be about your business case, about the value. And I don't say that cost is not relevant, but cost should not determine your decision to move something to the cloud or not. So the upfront investment, I already talked a little bit on that. So there is an upfront investment you will have to make, and that is the upfront investment to make sure that at least your IT staff is properly trained. Because IT will not disappear. If you move everything into the cloud, you will still need IT for your governance, for your security, for your access, for your end users. IT will be there. But the tasks that IT perform, they will hugely change in the next couple of years, or maybe it's already happening. So I work with I'm very happy with my employer because we moved everything into the cloud. We're a cloud-only company, and I'm so happy because I don't have to bother about Exchange servers or SharePoint servers or CRM servers. We moved everything to online. So I don't have to bother about an Exchange server going down, or my storage is going down, or my hypervisor is going down. I don't have those red and green and yellow lights anymore. But you have to make sure that the IT staff is properly trained to manage the workloads wherever they are. I get very little questions, but I'm right on time. So these are my considerations for you to start moving to the cloud, for as far as you don't already have some stuff running in the cloud. There's a question coming. Someone with a hotmail.com address is typing a message. The previous slide. Let's go to the previous slide. This one. So the slides are available for download, and there you will also find a download of a PDF file that I created out of this slideshow, so you don't have to have the whole slideshow, but it's available as a handout, as a PDF file as well. So you can look it over.
And we will be sending you the link to the PDF as well at the end of this webinar session. All right, so thank you, Jasper. So moving on to the Q&A that we are going into. When we talk about cloud, there's a lot of, there's always something called scalability and elasticity. Can you talk a little bit more the difference between those two and the importance of it within the cloud?
Yeah, sure. So when you buy a server for on-premises, you always have to buy that server for your maximum performance. So probably that server runs 24/7, but it's only really working 5 hours a week. Really working, really like 80% CPU and using all the memory and using all the disks, and for the rest it just stands there doing nothing, consuming electricity and generating heat. So that's a bad return on investment. And in the cloud, it's a consumption-based model. So you pay for what you only pay for what you actually use. And there you can scale things up and scale things down as needed. So I can deploy a application and say, okay, that application needs to be up and running 24/7, that's fine, but only a very small instance. And if that instance, if the CPU hits 60%, hits 80%, automatically another instance will be added. And when those two instances together hit 80%, another instance will be added automatically. So in the morning you start with one instance, and then a couple of hours later you're maybe running 8 instances at peak performance. And then as CPU drops below 60%, an instance is removed. And at the end of the day, around 8 o'clock at night, there will be only that one instance, that small instance left running. So that is the scalability of the cloud, and that is really going to save you a lot of money, because now all your servers are running 24/7 doing nothing.
Correct.
And you have to pay for those servers as well.
Indeed. And about elasticity?
It's a bit of the same. You can, but then it's not about a 24/7 application. It's more if you're in the business with seasonal fluctuators in there. So if you're in tourism, then during high season, you probably need more resources than in the low season. Or if you are in the accountancy business, then probably by the end of the fiscal year, you need a lot of more resources for all those customers you have than you need for the rest of the year. So you can just bring up a couple of servers for 2 months a year, and for the rest of the year, those servers are not there in the cloud. You cannot do that on premises because you have to actually buy that. And in the cloud, you can just say, hey, I need 4 extra servers for 2 months. Hey, go ahead, put them up there, make sure your connectivity is in place, and after 2 months, when you're done with that, you throw them away.
Yes. All right. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them or type it in the instant message box. There's no wrong question, so don't be shy. So talking about cloud computing in this era, I know that a lot of customers are coming to us saying, hey, but how secure is it? Can we trust it? So what can you say about the security benefits that the cloud computing can actually give you as a company?
For me, that is always a very easy question.
Okay,
because,
good.
Yeah, that's really easy. So now in your suppose you have an IT department and you have 10 people working in your IT department, and those 10 people all know a very, very, very tiny bit really about security. So then we go to a big cloud provider. So we do Microsoft. So let's look at Microsoft. Microsoft has 6,500 people working full-time who do nothing but security. They do nothing but. So where do you think that your data is safer?
Well, but safe is like a feeling. You always tell us safety is a feeling.
Yeah, definitely. So if I go to a customer and we talk about cloud and the decision maker does not feel well in his belly when I talk about cloud, then I leave the person alone because I cannot argue with emotions. So security is a feeling. You either feel secure or not. But if it's really about the emotional feeling of security, I cannot argue with people like that, because then I come with technical arguments for a emotion, and that is an unfair discussion.
Correct. So this is a little bit a more complicated question. Oh wait, let me see. Well, it's about governance. However, you told me that governance is a very a more complicated question. But in this webinar, we have a lot of IT managers, so I'll just hit you with it. How do I gain the speed and agility of the public cloud, and at the same time not compromise on governance?
So governance in general is about safeguarding your data. How do you treat your data, your corporate data? So that can be anything. So that applies to your email, it applies to your files and folders, it applies to your databases, whatever. And actually in the cloud, Nothing will have to change in there because you can apply the same principles in cloud computing that you can do on premises. On the other hand, in the cloud, built in, there is way more features available in there, out of the box, let's call it out of the box, that would be very, very hard to configure on premises. Let me give you one example, and that's the example of data classification. So you can classify data based on whatever. So very simple example, I can create a Word document, and as soon as I put the word secret in that document, then that document can be classified as confidential automatically. So you could configure that on premises, but that is really high level IT. I'm really talking about level 400.
Yes.
So techies should know what I mean with level 400, so it's even 450 to configure that on premises. In the cloud, if you use SharePoint Online, it's available out of the box. You don't have to configure the whole stack that sits below there, and you can just say, hey, as soon as user Adriana types in the word secret in whatever document, that document gets classified as confidential. And then it will be treated in a different way. So you have your rule. So you make it, you put in the word secret, and what does that mean? That it will be treated like this must be saved indefinitely.
All right. Jasper, let's wrap up. I still have one question in our instant messaging box. It says, in your opinion, do you think that a cloud is less susceptible to hacking as server-related systems maybe?
I definitely do. I definitely do, because because those large cloud vendors, so let's name 3 or 4 of them. So that goes for Amazon, that goes for Google, that goes for Microsoft, that goes for Oracle, IBM. They have armies to protect their data centers from breaches. And they are pretty good at that, because whenever such a huge data center is breached, that will be in the news. So you will see that 98% of successful breaches occur in the data centers that are owned by companies for who IT is not their primary business, like financial institutes or governments or whatever. They just have, like most of us, they just have an IT department, and they do the best they can, but it's not core business, so they can only do the best they can. On the other hand, what I need to add to that is that when you look at data leakage or breaches, most of them occur through end users and social engineering, and not through direct attacks on servers. I mean, it's more spectacular. You read it in the news more often if there's a server somewhere attacked with a denial of service attack or whatever, because it's spectacular, because the impact is huge immediately. But when you look at the statistics on how businesses suffer losses because of breaches, it is 9 times out of 10, it's through end user computers with malware installed, or social engineering where people are asked in a phone conversation for their username and their password, and the naive, ignorant user will just give that, and there you go.
All right, Jasper, I think we just need to start wrapping up.
Yep.
I invite everyone to download the ebook. It's about managing IT transformation for the hybrid cloud. If you have to click the download button. If not, Narelis will send you the link right now for you to have availability for on this ebook. We would like to thank you for your time. We appreciate. Next month we will have our, oh yes, follow us on social media, of course. And next month it's okay, you can, yes. Next month our topic of the webinar will be on modern communication options at work. We will be sending you the invitation link in about a week or two. Everyone enjoy the carnival season. We know the most of us are in the Caribbean. It's a wonderful carnival season, and see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.